Hello, you are listening to the OmniTalk Fast Five, brought to you in partnership with the A&M Consumer and Retail Group, Firework, SPS Commerce, and Sezzle. All right, let's move on to headline number 3. According to Marketing Dive, Gap has shut down its retail media efforts. Gap unveiled its retail media network, GPS Media, in February of 2022. GPS Media was intended to help the embattled retailer attract brands interested in placing ads on Gap's website that could be targeted with first-party data. But now Gap is calling it quits and says it plans to direct more resources toward areas like logistics and fulfillment. Billy, we're going to you first on this one. Is this a blip or a sign of more announcements like this to come, you think?
I think it's a sign of more to come with
You
Gap.
do?
I think
Okay.
it's another, the last time I was on, we had a different topic, and it was Gap and Amazon.
Right.
And, my point then was, one, it's heartbreaking to see, because this feels more like Gap just grabbing anything they can to try to see what sticks, and nothing's anchored in an overarching strategy. And I think this is another example of that. I don't see what kind of proposition Gap would bring to anybody to want to advertise. Like, where are the tie-ins? What is, Gap? It pains me just because I've got such a soft spot in my heart for the brand.
Right.
Growing up in the 80s and 90s. I mean, Gap was it. And to not see it there anymore, right, is a bit heartbreaking. I want to see from Gap and Gap leadership a strategy. What are they going to become? What are they going to, who do they want to be? Because they've kind of reached, in my opinion, their ubiquitousness the ubiquity that they reached, years ago, turned them from being a brand and a culture, if you will, as an identity, to a commodity. And it's I just don't see anything that is going to add to the brand strength with any of these activities that they're doing. It's just,
and so just to push you on that a little bit more,
sure.
And then we'll go to Lakshman too. But do you think, when you said you think it's a sign of more things to come, do you think more retailers then are going to also pull back on their efforts? Because like you said, you don't see the value proposition on retail media network for Gap.
Yeah.
You think this will be a sign of more dominoes to fall in that direction?
I was thinking of it more in the more things to come from a Gap perspective, not from an industry. But I think, but since you posed the question that way, I do think that, yes, retailers say that are selling multi-brands. I think a retail media network for them, right, can make a lot of does make a lot of sense. Right. Specific brands, unless there are very strong tie-ins that either the brand, because they possess on their own. Like if Nike tried to do this,
right?
I mean, people are going to want to jump on Nike's on that train, right? Or Lulu or somebody like that who has that kind of position. I think it might make sense for them. But so I think in that way it can make sense. But for anybody who doesn't have that proposition, yeah, I think it's going to be efforts tried and failed, or tried and abandoned.
Yeah. Not everybody's Nike. Not everybody can hold that kind of weight. Lakshman, what do you think? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's a trade-off question at this point. They are now beginning to ramp up their investments in a shared network for their logistics, right? Similar to what we see others do in the space. So at this point, it's a question of, where do you put your resources behind and efforts behind. I think they are seeing that there is greater traction in the market for a shared economy for distribution and logistics. And I mean, 38%, 40% of the market is controlled by Amazon. And, Target and Walmart round up the first, the top 60% of the spend in the space. So, it's very hard to break in, very, very hard to get scale in the retail media space right now. Unless you have a broad assortment offering, right? A Target can attract a diverse group of customers, while Gap attracts only a certain type of consumer. Right. So it's pretty hard to sell in lots more into that particular channel. So I think it's a question of trade-off.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I mean, your thoughts around this answering, I love the dimensions to this question, but your thoughts were more specifically, I think, going back to what you asked Billy too, is like, how many are too many retail media networks?
Yeah, 100%. I like the move. I think it's really smart. And I agree with both of what you guys are saying. Like for me, like I would be two parts to this. First, I would be definitely putting my efforts towards the logistics side of things and fulfillment, relatively speaking, because like Billy said, they're ubiquitous. They have that stood up. There's scale that they can take advantage of in that direction. Retail media, not so much, right? Like Billy, like you guys both said, like they're kind of limited in what they can tie in and the value proposition they can give to the brands that would want to advertise. And so, yeah, my second part would be like, I found out at Shop Talk, I was talking to Irene from Treasure Data, who we had an awesome podcast with recently. You guys should listen to it if you haven't yet. She told us that there are over 40 retail media networks that have been stood up.
Yeah.
And I got thinking, I'm like, who are those 40? Like, that's crazy. So outside the big guys where like you have multi-brands in their offering, which is most likely the branded grocers, the branded mass super centers that are in the home categories, the CPG categories, the health categories, the beauty categories. I have trouble seeing this working to that degree where there's 40 of them throughout the country. So I think there's going to be more of this happening when I put it in that perspective. But what do you think?
Well, my just last closing word real quick would be that I disagree with you about fulfillment. I wouldn't be focusing on that either. I think Gap, Gap has to focus on how they make themselves relevant across all their brands to the next generation of consumer, or you don't have a fulfillment and logistics network that's going to be worth leveraging.
That's a great
people
point.
Aren't buying from
and I think I said that on that podcast too. I think it's just relatively, I like this better than the other one, right? Yeah.